Welcome, brave souls attending live and punctually. Happy to have you. We've got some more folks coming in. I'm going to keep letting people in for the next few minutes, but thanks for being here. You are up for having your camera on. I would love that. I totally get it. How sometimes it's not the right thing for you. So, um, but welcome. Thanks for being here on a Friday. Really appreciate you guys giving your time. I know some of you very well, some of you I don't know at all. So got quite the range. I'll just give folks another like minute or two to get here before I really dive in. So thank you for being on time. And would invite you to just as we're in this arrival moment, let yourself really feel the present moment contact your body is making with the surfaces supporting you. We'll get into this a little bit later, but this really being in the present with yourself is one way of starting to have more pleasure. And just as we're getting started here, see if you can notice what might be pleasant or nice about having the support, the very simple, very ordinary support of the surfaces underneath you. Okay, well, we seem to have caught the first wave of folks, so I may continue letting people in, but I'm going to get started. So thank you all for being here today. Um, Welcome to How to Have More Pleasure Without Being Selfish or Irresponsible. And I just want to assure you that you are in the right place here today if you want more pleasure for any reason. But you're also in the right place if you're a little scared of wanting for more pleasure, or like you're not sure you want it, or if you want it, but it feels complicated, or if your relationship with pleasure is just generally complicated, not necessarily easy. So if any of those apply to you, you are still in the right place. And here's what I want to promise you is that by the end of our time together, you will at least understand your relationship with pleasure better and have compassion for why it might be a little complicated, and some very simple tools for having more of it, and a plan for having more of it. Um, and I'm going to give your brain, your rational mind, some really good reasons why you get to have it, because a lot of us want to make it so that we can't, or there's our brain likes to tell us why we can't. So I'm just going to mute everyone for now. But okay, so here's what I want to ask you as we get started here, whether you're here live or you're watching the replay. Really check in with yourself. Are you willing to let this experience of being here with me for the next 90 minutes be fun and be pleasurable? Are you willing to enjoy it? You've taken this time already. Check in, really check in. Notice what the actual answer is. If it's not a yes, that's okay. Let that be there. But if it is a yes, how could that start right now? So just taking a moment to invite you, how could your present moment experience be 2% or 10% better right now? Maybe it's changing your position. Maybe it's getting a drink. Maybe it's relaxing a little bit, whatever it is. Check in. What could add to this moment? And are you willing to let this be a pleasant experience for you and to take responsibility for that? So whatever that means for you, if it means you need to change your position or uh, get a drink or whatever it might be, go outside. Great. So, like I said, some of you I know very well. My mom is on this call, and but some of you I'm just meeting. And so, for those of you who don't know me already, I'm Rachel Zurer. I'm a coach, and I help unsatisfied high achievers find true and lasting fulfillment in their life. And I come by the need to coach people in this pretty honestly. It's been hard won over the years. Got my own overachiever badge in college, graduating summa cum laude from Duke. I'm a former magazine editor and copywriter, training as a yoga teacher and some nervous system oriented body work called cranial sacral. And I'm also certified as a big leap coach with Gay and Katie Hendricks, who wrote the book The Big Leap. If you know that, all about genius. We'll talk about that a little later. And that body of work has really opened me up to the power of play and pleasure over the last decade. And I also spent a bunch of time studying with the Conscious Leadership Group, who also emphasize play, and pleasure, and rest as part of their 15 commitments of conscious leadership that they work on with very high level leaders. So that's some of my background, why I might be a good guide for you today. So just to orient you to our day today, we're going to do some teaching and some interactive activities here for about the first hour is my plan. I've got a lot of material, but this is my first time delivering it, so we'll see how it goes. And then I'm going to save about the last 30 minutes for Q&A, maybe actually some quick hot seats if that feels alive. I tend to work very much in the emergence, so we'll see what happens with that. And um, and as some of you have been asking, I will also make sure to take time to let people know how they can get supported by me through one-on-one coaching if that's something you're interested in. There will be a replay. It'll be in your inbox by tonight. I made sure my screen's here and there, but I'm not mainly using slides. But I will also send the AI summary notes along with a replay. So again, I'm really inviting you to enjoy being here, whatever that means to you. If you like taking notes, feel free. But if not, know that you'll get a summary and the chance to watch the video again. So let's get into it. Any questions before we start? Totally fine if not, but if anyone has anything coming up already. Okay. I trust that if you do, feel free to put questions in the chat. I may answer them in the moment and I may ignore them and come back to them later. So I reserve the right to do whatever feels aligned. Okay. So the reason I created this time for us together is there's a problem I see really often, and I've lived it. And I see it with a lot of the amazing people I know and work with, which is that it feels like there's this sort of ceiling on enjoying your life. And it can apply to a lot of different things: food and rest and relaxation and fun and sex and even work. And a lot of people that I know would really love more pleasure, but how to fit it in the day feels hard. I asked a bunch as you registered, if you registered, not just the very first day, I asked you like what gets in the way of pleasure. And a lot of people said that it was about having to work too much, or like that they distract themselves a lot. And so it's hard to fit it in the day, and it's hard to get your brain to slow down and shut up long enough that you can have it. Even if you have a moment where you could rest, or you try to, or you try to do something fun, it can be hard to turn off. And even the things you kind of should be enjoying, you sometimes don't. I work with a lot of people who are in some form of resenting their life or feeling stuck in their work or in a relationship, and who have this real, like, just real knowing that there's more possible, but can't figure out how to get there. And so if this resonates, feel free to say yes, drop it in the chat. I know a bunch of you in your registration mentioned things like this. And all of that, this feeling like there's this ceiling between you and real enjoyment. Maybe you get it once in a while, but not as often as you like. It leaves you feeling drained or tired or depressed, exhausted, sometimes lonely, sometimes ashamed that this is what's happening. It's like it should be different. And so the idea I want to share today, that's kind of fundamentally underneath all of this, is it's twofold, but it's this idea that pleasure is a skill and that you should cultivate it. And so pleasure is a skill you should cultivate. And then the question we get to keep asking ourselves as we explore this is like, how much could I love and enjoy my life? How much could I? And so I just want to take a pause in a moment. Again, we'll talk later, but pleasure comes in each little moment. And so I'm inviting myself and inviting you into even just a moment, really letting that question land. How much could I love my life, moment by moment by moment? And so first, starting off with, why does pleasure matter? If my camera gets really fuzzy, feel free to tell me. Sorry, it does that sometimes. I'm just going to turn it back. There we go. It focused itself. Okay. Okay. Well, so why does pleasure matter? I'm going to share my screen here for a second. And there's some existential reasons why pleasure matters. So this is from some research that a woman who worked with a lot of like hundreds of dying people did. And these are the top 5 regrets that people have on their deathbed. And they generally are about uh, not enough pleasure, right? There's like, we get this one wild and precious life. Enjoying it is a good idea. I wish that I let myself be happier. I wish that I had the courage to live true to myself. Staying in touch with friends. All of these to me, all of these regrets that are really common things that people like when they're looking back on their whole life are sad about. To me, they connect directly with pleasure. There's just this like existential understanding that pleasure might be useful. And there's a quote I like. There's a version of it that comes from Pema Chodron, but it's basically this idea: death is certain, time of death is uncertain. How shall I live? Right? So when we zoom out and we think about it that way, it's easy to realize that like taking in more joy, taking in more enjoyment is sort of inherently might have value in and of itself. That's sort of the definition of pleasure is an enjoyable experience. But even zooming into kind of the mundane day-to-day life where we're not thinking about this memento mori, this idea that we're going to die and that we might as well savor every moment and that this is just this we are here for this flash, even when we're just on a random Tuesday doing a task for a client or whatever it might be, or standing in line in the bank, zooming into the more mundane reasons why pleasure matters. uh, there's a lot of evidence and research out there that pleasure that we basically most of us like in our culture these days, all of us serious adults who like cut out play to try to be more productive and who are grinding away trying to be good at life, like that we have it backwards. That pleasure is not something we work really hard for and then we earn, but in fact it's the fuel. It is part of what we need to put in the gas tank for having a good life as we would define it, not just from these deathbed points of view, but for health and learning and resilience and creativity and connection and achievement. It's like even if what we want is sort of a better bank account and more status and sort of some of these external things, that actually more pleasure is a better way to get there, even if we're not getting on it by itself. So yeah, the usual formula of like let's grind now and enjoy later is like backwards from what data shows is going to be the best way to go about things, because there's research from all over the place that is not what and if people are interested in citations and stuff, I can pull them together for you later, but that having a sense of pleasure, and I would include that as like playfulness and joy as you're doing a task, just like this state of being in the moment that is a little more relaxed. It doesn't have to be just like totally sleepy, but it's basically the opposite of fear and anxiety and resentment. Having more pleasure, it creates better learning outcomes. It's way you memorize things better, you learn things faster when you're playing. It creates more creativity, you solve problems better. When you're in a state of fear, you literally get tunnel vision. Your vision gets very narrow. So being in a state of play and pleasure, it literally and figuratively, it can broaden your attention. So you can be more aware of more possibilities, more aware of the world around you. You have less stress, your immune system functions better, your memory improves, there's less burnout. And then this sort of thing I was saying before is that people who are nourished and connected and emotionally resourced, that gives you more capacity to contribute. That gives you more capacity to be there for the people that you love, or to make the difference you want in the world, or to get the hard thing done. Also, pleasure is a really good ingredient in better relationships. Some of you may have heard of the Gottmans. They're long-term relationship researchers, and they find that celebrating together as a couple is a really important measure of the sustainability and positivity in a relationship. There's evidence that play is actually a biological drive, like sleep or nutrition. And that there's studies, rats that are deprived of play don't mate, are less resilient to stress. They can't distinguish friend from foe. when rats who play are exposed to a stress, they get over it faster. And rats who aren't allowed to play like get really, really struggle to recover. There's also research that um, in sales, like corporate land, that choosing salespeople based on being optimistic was and having like a more joy in their work, they actually outsold their pessimistic people. This wasn't about their sales skills, it was about their attitude, by 19% in year one and 57% in year two. Um, and that and then here's one that doesn't get talked about as much, and that maybe there isn't quite the same like scientific data on. But I also think that pleasure, well, this is one of the hypotheses of how I live and how I work with people, is that pleasure and desire and joy are signals from the universe. You could say your soul, but they're like a biological signal of alignment. The yes in your body is helping you move towards the things that you can have the greatest contribution with. So that's a lot of reasons why it might be a good idea to really let yourself focus more on pleasure. But okay, great. We started with just like, I mean, pleasure is like inherently a yummy thing, right? So, you know, maybe the part of you that doesn't want you to have so much, this data can help with, but if it's so great, like, why is it so hard? Why are we spending our Friday on a workshop about it and it's worthwhile and this is actual problem, right? Well, I want to say it's not the reasons that your brain might want to offer. Some of them might be pleasure is bad. There's something shameful about it, or there's something wrong with wanting it, or that you don't deserve it. Sorry, I just managed to lose my notes. There we go. Okay. um, a lot of you have the story there isn't time. That's a big one I hear. I want to dispel that myth in a little bit as we talk about how to get into pleasure, because pleasure can happen no matter what you're doing. It's irresponsible, it's selfish, it's frivolous, it's not important, it's not safe. Did I miss any reasons why your brain might want to offer you that pleasure is so hard? Let me know if I missed any. But thanks, Brian. Uh, there's basically three categories of reasons that pleasure is so hard, and none of them are that. Right? So, okay, just seeing what I made graphics about and what I didn't. Got it. So there's three reasons pleasures are so hard, and they fall into three categories of reasons. One is the stuff happening in your brain, your human brain. There's some reasons that pleasure is hard there. Another is that we live in a culture that has made pleasure hard. And then the third, which is related to both of the others, but a little more specific, and there's some things I want to talk about, is your specific conditioning also, which comes from your brain and your culture, but like specifically your family can also make pleasure really hard. So let's start with your brain. First of all, our brains are evolutionarily wired to focus on the negative. And this, even though there's all these great benefits of pleasure, you can see how this might be evolutionarily adaptive. The anxious, ancestors, the ones who were very on guard for threat, are in some senses more likely to survive, right? The relaxed ones sometimes didn't. So we have descended from the anxious ones. And there's biological evidence there, right? 2/3 of our amygdala, which is the emotion processing place in the helps process emotion in the brain, 2/3 of its neurons are dedicated to detecting threats. We process negative information faster, and it's stored more durably, and then it's weighted more heavily. So let me say that again. We process it faster, we store it better in long-term storage, and then we give it more weight. And then babies, even starting at like 6 months, they show stronger responses to negative stimulus than positive stimulus. Like there's a hardwired bias in our brain to be paying attention to the negative, to be giving it more weight, to be remembering it better. And we don't need to get rid of all that. Being able to detect threats, it's clearly adaptive. And especially in those moments where there's like a physical and immediate threat. We're, about to cross the street and we notice like something coming at us. Thank goodness that we have this nervous system that reacts this way. But it's not always useful in the modern world, right? That's one reason, is that we're like, our brains just like to be like, they do orient to fear. And this is just part of the hardware we're working with. Does that mean we're stuck and there's nothing we can do about it? Not at all. We're going to get to that. But just knowing that like the direction of the current is away from pleasure and towards fear within our brain is really helpful to know, because it makes sense, and us have more compassion for the reason that pleasure can sometimes be hard, even though it's so helpful and healthy. There's also this phenomenon that you may have heard of called hedonic adaptation. We know if anyone's heard of this, but it's this idea that there's essentially, we get used to good things if we don't like put our focus on really appreciating the good stuff, then we just get used to it. And there's like, for example, data on this is studies on lottery winners. When people were measuring their happiness, obviously I think any of us, if we suddenly won the lottery, that would be a very happy day. But lottery winners over time end up going back to their pre-winning sort of baseline happiness measure, and take less pleasure from everyday experience. That one's a little bit of a mystery. I'm not going to try and unpack it here. And then meanwhile, the other end of the scale, people who were paralyzed in accidents, which you might think of circumstances as like, oh gosh, that would be a terrible circumstance, that we would all be very sad the day that happened. They also like readjusted more back to their baseline. It's like we sort of have a thermostat setting in our heads. Not entirely sure how it gets set. That's some of what we'll talk about, but basically there's a baseline that feels comfortable to us of how much pleasure we're allowed to have in any given moment, how happy we're allowed to be. And if circumstances in our life move us far from one or the other, the default, without conscious attention or work on it, is that we will go back to whatever that thermostat baseline is, that we will normalize every new level. And then we start scanning for what's missing. This is why when you achieve a goal, or you get a raise, or you get a promotion, like suddenly or you have more time in your schedule, it's much easier to appreciate something and enjoy it in the moment that it's new than if we've had it for a while. By default, that's the thing. None of this is fate. None of this is beyond what we can control. It's just these default settings are that our brain is going to notice what's negative, and then it's going to adjust really fast to what's positive. And, I think I'm actually going to save this to talk about this in another moment. But, okay, well, actually, one mechanism that internal thermostat uses, my teacher, Gay Hendricks, has identified and named in a way that I think is incredibly useful. It's the thing that actually inspired me to want to teach this workshop in the first place, which is this idea of the upper limit problem, which is because of especially this idea of the hedonic adaptation. It's this idea that when we start to feel more good feeling in our body than we're used to, more than our current set point is at, more than we are trained at or comfortable feeling, then we will actually actively hit our own upper limit and do something to bring ourselves back down. And since I've been paying attention to this hypothesis, this phenomenon, which has been about a decade, I will say I start to see it more and more and more in myself and in other people. And it can be, for example, like he and his wife Katie first named it in their book Conscious Loving about things that would happen in relationships. It's like you have a really wonderful, like connected, amazing weekend with your partner or somebody you love. And then you kind of reach this point where it's just like more than you can tolerate. And then somebody does something that picks a fight, right? And suddenly you're back in disconnection. Or the simplest form that I see it in myself and in my clients often will be like celebrating something good, allowing, like really letting ourselves enjoy it, like putting our attention on the positive thing, and then some like worry thought like invades from left field, like just as we're sitting there trying to enjoy the victory. And the thing about it is it's always like kind of a legitimate worry thought. It's like, well, yes, I do need to pay my water bill before the deadline, right? It's not like totally a lie, but the fact that our brain is asking us to pay attention to this particular thing in this moment usually is a symptom of this thing called the upper limit, where we're actually just uncomfortable because we haven't practiced having that level of positive feeling in our body in that moment. And so we come slam it back down. There's other ways to do it. I did a video a while ago where I had just had a really successful experience, and then I watched myself like eating more food than I wanted to. And I was like, oh yes, look, that's a way I upper limit myself. Or getting anxious about things when we don't really need to. So there's this way that most of our minds, sometimes we'll even create an accident or get sick. It can be bigger things than that. But for the most part, like the simplest way to think about it is just we're happy and then we worry ourselves instead of letting ourselves stay in the happy. So that's one reason it's so hard, because all of these are tendencies that our brain is going to do when it's on its default mode. And so as you may be starting to catch, part of what we need to do to have more pleasure is recognize these things and get out of the default mode. And so again, I'm going to talk about that a little more, but there's a whole nother layer beyond just what's happening in the brain, of why it can be so hard to have pleasure. And this is partly about the culture that we are swimming in. And I want to acknowledge that, folks watching this call and folks on this call may be from quite a few different cultures. Even in the town I live in, I would say there's 30 different cultures of, different little subcultures. And so I'm using this term pretty broadly, but I would say like modern, Western, capitalist, techno-focused, pretty hustly entrepreneur culture. This isn't just one thing there, but the culture that many of us live in. One piece is that, so this culture is not very well optimized to support pleasure and happiness. Part of it is that commercial capitalism, like advertising, for example, like it needs you to feel like things are not enough. Buying things, our economy is very focused on helping stoke dissatisfaction. And I don't think that's always a bad thing. I've been in marketing. I'm a coach, like helping people really get honest with their dissatisfaction. I think that can be really healthy. And at the same time, living in a culture where we are bombarded with messages of not enough, not enough, not enough, and buy this thing and get more. That's not a great environment. We're not getting a lot of messages. I mean, there are those sort of more and more like positive billboards coming in and things like that, but you don't get a ton of messages that people are invested in paying to have you see that are about helping you be happier and feel more pleasure. We also, as a baseline in the US anyway, have basically, the people who came and created this country, many of them were Puritans. That's this particular culture with a particular aesthetic that explicitly opposed spontaneous enjoyment of life as a distraction from God, which I will say I have not deeply studied it, but does not make sense for me. Even if we're orienting to God, pleasure feels like part of that to me. But in this culture that was like some of the seed crystal of America as a nation, any pleasure that was not in service of productivity was like morally suspicious. And even sports were only okay if they were helping you work more efficiently. And so this idea, this idea, and I don't want to say it's just the Puritans too. I know Catholics are famous for their guilt. Jews are famous for their guilt. It doesn't have to just be a religious thing, but there's this real undercurrent of this idea of like idle hands, guilty pleasures, I'll rest when I'm dead, like pleasure being bad. And that current still drifts through the air we breathe and the water we drink and the media we consume and the books we read and just the cultural norms, the things that are normal in this culture. And in addition to that, accelerating over the last long while is this productivity worship, where there's a lot of modern work culture that equates busyness with virtue and rest with laziness. As we've already covered, this is actually factually inaccurate. There's research from Stanford that says if you work more than 50 hours a week, productivity declines really sharply, and after 55, it's like any extra hours are pointless, and yet you still have people grinding away, whether because they have some big goal or because it's normalized. People, it's very normalized to be really, really busy. People like to compete about how busy they are, and there's this. I know so many people who feel guilty even pausing and resting. And so this is partly like the cultural water we swim in, but it's also partly slightly more personal than that. We each also have our own personal conditioning. And in particular, we each came up with many brilliant survival strategies as children to adapt and belong in the families that we were raised in. And so if your family had a hard time expressing joy, then you wouldn't belong as well if you were really good at it. And so you would learn to you internalize the messages you got from other people of, oh, that's too much, or don't do that, or that's not what we're like, or we don't do this. And then these become invisible, that you just start to see them as your personality, these survival strategies, these voices in your head. I was working with a client yesterday where we were playing with one of the voices in her head that was trying to keep her safe from taking a risk. And as we played with it, she realized, she's like, oh my gosh, this sounds like my dad. I didn't even realize. But these things that we internalize as children, we keep we learn lessons about what it takes to stay safe and belong in the particular family culture and family system. And that includes wider than just the family, but earliest is the family. And then those stay in our body, those stay in our brains as these default patterns that don't get unlearned, even if the circumstances change or they become maladaptive or the danger is gone. So we keep these strategies maybe longer than they would be helpful or we're conscious of. And there's also sort of this ancestral family pattern layer too, where like part of what gets passed down to that is exactly that, the conditions or the environment we grew up in. Things get passed down. If a family has lots of outbursts of anger or is really repressive of anger, the way we relate to things get passed down that way. But there's also like just the actual our nervous systems get calibrated too around our sort of what our ancestors went through, and we can inherit a nervous system that's calibrated for threats that we have never encountered, right? And so our parents or our grandparents or our great grandparents' experiences of scarcity and danger and survival, those can be coded in our bodies, both from kind of our own childhood survival strategy and the ways they get passed down. So basically to say, with all of these put together, the way our brains are wired, the culture we're in, the strategies we learned in our upper limits, we have also usually trained for decades through school and work and achievement at becoming experts at achievement, and we have not trained for pleasure. There's no infrastructure. We don't have the practice hours. We're not spending the time. And with all these forces kind of moving the default to be away from experiences of pleasure, it's no wonder that when we do try to grab a moment of pleasure, it can feel hard. So I'm going to pause and take a breath because that was a lot of the hard downside, complicated parts of it. I'm just going to let myself enjoy this moment. Because the good news is there's some solutions here. There are a lot of steps to actually have more pleasure, especially when we understand some of these dynamics. Okay, so I promised you a simple pleasure plan, and I do actually have like a worksheet for us, and it is simple, and we will get to it. But I want to give you the absolute simplest pleasure plan ever It might feel too simple, but it's actually simple doesn't mean easy. And the absolute simplest pleasure plan that helps with all of those things I was just talking about is presence. Be here now. There were some Harvard psychologists who used an app to gather 250,000 data points on what people were thinking and feeling and doing as they went about their lives. And they found that most people spend, this seems low to me actually, but 46.9% of their waking hours thinking about something other than what they're doing. And that mind wandering makes people unhappy. I'm actually shocked that it's that low. If you had to ask me to guesstimate, I would say most of us spend 90% of our time thinking about something other than what we're doing. But here's the thing is like I can find this from my own experience, but I love that there's data about it, is that what people were doing explained very little about how happy they were, and how present they were with what they were doing made the difference. So a better predictor of whether you're happy are you mentally present with what you're up to? Somebody ironing a shirt who's really being there, ironing the shirt and thinking about ironing the shirt is happier than the person planning their vacation while they're ironing a shirt. So, and there's other ways that this matters that I'll get into it even a little more. But being here now, in the present moment, feeling in the body what's actually happening. This is really the only way to have true pleasure, but it is also the best way to increase your pleasure, is to increase your presence. Now, how do you do that? Well, that's its own thing that we can get into, and I have some tricks for that. But basically, it's this idea that being with the circumstances that are happening to you, really fully with them, with all of your attention, with your body as well as your mind. It is not this like kind of nice to have mindfulness, spiritual luxury, but it is practically a skill towards getting more pleasure and fueling your life. All those benefits of pleasure we were talking about, your health, your creativity, right? Your relationships. You can't have more pleasure if you're not here for it. I noticed myself slowing down as I'm even trying to talk about it. So what does it take to actually get here for it? Because I don't want to just leave you with that ambiguous idea. And we can actually practice right now. I do have a picture of this one. But so I have a lot of different ways of talking about this, and I'm still deciding exactly which ones are going to make the most sense to share with you guys right now. But let's go with this just to start with. So some simple tricks to find more pleasure. This very first one is what I'm talking about being here now. So I want to invite you all to try this right in this moment. I started this call, if you were here right at the beginning, by inviting everyone to really feel their weight on the chair. So let's do that again. Whatever's supporting you right this moment, let yourself really feel the specific spots of contact with exactly where your butt or your back or your feet are touching the surfaces below you. And then go ahead and turn on your sense of hearing and let yourself listen for the farthest away sound you can hear right now. And then take two fingertips and rub them together slowly with such attention that you can feel the ridges on each fingertip. And now start to let one finger become the explorer and let it just move around another finger, really feeling the details of temperature and texture and sensation. And then look around and pick something in your line of sight that attracts you, that you find pleasant in some way. And let yourself look at it and really, really notice the details about it. What is it that you like about it? And what do you see in terms of color and line and texture? And then can you let yourself start to enjoy seeing that thing? Can you let yourself receive the beauty of it, or whatever flavor of beauty it might be? And then bringing your hands in connection with your body somewhere that might feel good. Giving yourself a little bit of firmer contact, maybe hugging your arms. That's what I'm doing. Or putting your hands on your heart, or hands on your face. Letting yourself really feel your body here with your own body. And then we're going to add in this second trick to finding more pleasure, which is adding breath. When we're in a relaxed nervous system state, our breath is slow and long and deep. And when we're in a state of threat, it gets short and shallow, so we can control that. So let yourself keep gently giving yourself some contact in a way that feels easy and pleasurable right now. Go ahead and add a little bit of breath. Let yourself feel your breath deeper than you were before. Let your belly move. And the cool thing about breath is it's like this constant metaphor that's just always with us. We're in this cycle of receiving and releasing that is generally pretty balanced. I like to think of pleasure as a form of receiving. And often our doing that gets in the way of pleasure is more of an outward thing. So we can allow the breath to show us a little bit more about what receiving can be like in this moment. Okay, so I've got a couple. Feel free to keep enjoying your senses as I keep talking, keep noticing your breath and letting it be a little deeper. I'm not going to get so deeply in to these other two tricks, but I'll just name them. That other ways to find more pleasure in the moment is with whatever's happening. To invite yourself to wonder about changing the story. A lot of the times where we're not enjoying something, it has to do with our story about it. Could I find a new story? What's another way to see this? How could this be fun? What do I like about it? What is here to enjoy? How could this be for me? Can I enjoy, like, I have a good story about this one. I was needed to get on a flight for a business trip, and I'm standing in my bedroom and my flight got canceled. Like 2 hours before I'm supposed to head to the airport, I get a notice that my flight has been canceled, and I get scramble to see what I could do. I find another flight. I think I can just barely make it, but I have to really rush to get there. It was like, so I'm driving, I'm packing up really quick. I'm driving, trying to make this flight. That's the only way I'll get there for this event that I'm going to. That's a 1 day event. So I really needed to get there. And as I'm driving, feeling all stressed about whether I'm going to make it to the airport, I just had this thought of like, how would this be fun? And then all of a sudden, I was like in an action movie. Like, I was like the adventurer who was like in this really fun race to see if I was going to make the plane. And, suddenly there was like the Mission Impossible music playing in my head. And this thing driving to the airport while my flight had been canceled and the weather was terrible and it was, and I was not sure I was going to make it. Instead of being a stressful situation, this was like 3 years ago, maybe longer. I'm still remembering it as a pleasurable peak experience because I thought to ask in that moment, is there another way I can relate to this? What's another way to see this? And another way to see it was as a game. And then it did get really fun. And I made the flight and I made it there. And I had a great story that I'm still telling. So, and that is similar to this last one here, which is this idea of playing with it. So that's one way of playing it is like, can I turn this into a game? How could this be fun? We actually, with games, choose all sorts of stressful situations, sports and board games and I don't even know. I'll stick with those two, sports and board games, crossword puzzles. We like challenge. We choose it. So, but the difference between that and the stressful thing we're hating that is in the way of our pleasure is how we're relating to it. So can we play with it? Can we see it as a game? Can we see what we're doing as a game? Or can we just get silly with ourselves? Can we exaggerate? I remember another experience of this for me. I was this very ordinary little moment, but I was getting really, really angry at my partner at the time because he had insisted that we buy the like ridiculous 3-pack of lettuce from Costco and we weren't eating it. And it was taking up room in the fridge and I was worried it was going to go bad. And I was making a big deal out of it and definitely like in a lot of drama. And then I caught myself. And then I started playing with it and I let myself just get absurd about it and started to, pretend like I was on the news reporting about the great lettuce crisis of whatever year it was and let my anxiety about the fact that we might let this lettuce go to waste and it was taking up room in our fridge become silly. And suddenly it was a pleasurable connective moment, whereas it would have just been me being anxious and him feeling frustrated that I was like on his case, right? So that's an example of playing with it. So here are some tricks to having more pleasure. This is essentially what a coaching session with me is like. We come into the senses, we add breath, we change the story, we play. We get more pleasure out of whatever's going on. We get more power out of what's going on. There's more to it than that, but these are all really powerful techniques. Yeah, Brian's saying he does CrossFit and doing it from a place of pleasure instead of a place of punishment or pushing yourself has been life-changing. Yes, I love that. So those are some simple ways to have more pleasure. I have a few others I can offer you. Set an intention for it. Intentions are incredibly powerful. Deciding that you want to have more pleasure and that you're going to put your attention on it and that this is something you want, this makes a difference. Intention organizes energy. So if you want more pleasure, intend to have more pleasure. It sounds really simple, but it's shockingly powerful. Another thing, so I was talking about earlier, all these brain facts that are the current we have to swim against in order to land in our pleasure, right? These tendencies that are hardwired into us. So we have to work with them. We have to not make them a problem, not make it a failing on us, not make it our fault if our brain's braining and survivaling at us. But so some things that can help is to take pleasure in small sips, to not feel like this is part of this coming into the moment, to not feel like we have to have, the best day at the spa and enjoy the whole thing. And even then, it can be hard to sometimes find pleasure. Can just adding a little bit of ooh, could I enjoy? What can I enjoy about this? Well, I just getting in my car. Oh wow, the feeling of the steering wheel right now feels amazing. Like coming into the senses again. Things that if our brain is braining. Yeah. And then another one that I was mentioning was this noticing the upper limits, which is also a way of saying noticing our survival brain. Being aware of the upper limit problem and noticing that in a moment of joy, our brain may come in and try and interrupt the joy, especially with a thought of worry or with picking a fight or with something like that. Catching it in the moment, catching it later is amazing. Looking back and being able to say, oh, I think I over limited there. Catching it in the moment, often just seeing it is enough to release it, to say, oh, okay, my brain's trying to protect me from having too much pleasure here. What if I didn't need to do that? And then coming into the senses, coming into the breath, and can I enjoy good feeling for just another moment here? And knowing that actually that happiness set point, it's by default, we'll go back to it. But if we set an intention to continue raising it, to continue expanding our capacity for good feeling, to continue expanding our nervous system's ability to feel safe and be safe, even in positive experiences, that is actually a skill that we can practice. It's like lifting weights. You start with a little bit. That's why the small steps is good. But if we have an intention to keep expanding our capacity for good feelings and to really tune into them and to notice and to notice, oh, how long can I feel good? Oh, I got to like 30 seconds in a row that time. Great. Celebrate. Let it be okay that we didn't go for a whole minute. The more and more and more we practice and have that as an intention, the more our actual nervous system capacity and habitual brain capacity to allow good feelings starts to expand. So that we have these tendencies, the more we can see the voices in our head as our childhood conditioning or something from our culture that we don't necessarily need to pay attention to in this exact moment, be here now, we start to get freedom from them. Celebrating the gains is also an incredibly important way to get more pleasure. There's this story, this is one of these culturally passed down ones, of my dad is actually incredibly brilliant at this one. He can achieve something, but then we'll tell you all about the reasons you shouldn't celebrate him or give him credit for it. He can get 97% up a mountain, but didn't get the last 3%, so we don't get to talk about the 97%, right? This is one I come by very naturally. It is not actually a super helpful strategy. I trust that it came out of his lifetime for good reasons and that it served him well. Sorry, I'm going to just pop my camera back to focus. But actually celebrating, oh my gosh, I didn't accomplish the whole thing, but here's what I have accomplished. Or things aren't going exactly how I want to, but like giving yourself permission to enjoy being partway there. It's another great way to have more pleasure. Okay. I want to make sure we have time to do this pleasure plan that I promised us. So this is a little interactive activity I'm going to invite us into right now. I'm putting a PDF in the chat, which you can download if you're in a place to download. The link will be there if you're in the replay. I'm also going to put a link here if it's easier for you to go to a Google Drive version of it. And I'm going to share my screen so you can see what we're doing, even if you're not in a spot where you can fully participate right now. So this is just a little worksheet that I cooked up for us that is designed to be used daily, but we're going to just use it right now. And it's a very, very simple daily practice, but this relates to the setting the intention and the coming to the senses. So starting with, and I will ask you, you can either literally fill this out, the PDF is fillable, or you can print it and write on it, or you can just write in a journal right now, or just do it in your head as we go along together. But question one is to just actually drop into this very exact present moment and ask yourself, what's available to enjoy right now? So I would ask each of you, I'm going to give you just 20 seconds or so, but to come up with a few things that are available to enjoy right this moment. And if anyone wants to share any of theirs in the chat, I would love to hear what for you is available to enjoy right now. This is a very powerful question. Brian's going to light a candle. I have a candle lit. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the feeling of my breath. I see some folks typing. The next question. Yes. Someone says it smells like coffee and hazelnuts. I'm resting on my couch and looking out my window to big trees. That sounds great. The breeze, celebrating her friend. Thanks, Sarah. Bunch of baby birds on the deck. Right. I challenge you to, in ordinary moments, just an ordinary kind of neutral moment, if you ask this question and you come into your senses, I guarantee you can find something. The advanced level is asking this question in challenging circumstances, in negative circumstances. I posted a video this week about asking a question like this in the dentist chair when my mouth was full of gork, right? And finding my capacity just by having the intention to find it, that I was like, okay, I don't love this. I wouldn't choose it often, but I can enjoy pieces of it, right? What's available, and can go with even harder circumstances than that. That one, it was at least, I think of the dentist as sort of like consensual torture, but we even harder, sort of more emotionally fraught circumstances, it's still a really valuable question. What's available to enjoy now? And this is actually why in deep moments of grief, when we find those little bits of beauty, they're so poignant. Some of the best poetry is about like the things we get to see through the pain, the joy we get to find, and the polarity. Okay. The next question of this plan is, why does pleasure matter to me today? This is for those of you who have those of which I think might be all of us. Let me know if you're an exception. Who have trouble justifying letting this be important. Right? I gave you all a bunch of reasons why it might matter, but you can find the one that's alive in the moment. Why does this matter? Letting yourself really anchor the intention to find it. And then the next question is 3 things I'll do to create it or receive it, and when. So we're creating a plan. And here's a fun thing about pleasure. Anticipation of pleasure can be also quite pleasurable. Now, I'm a big fan of the Be Here Now, but at the same time, this is a very helpful neuroscience trick. Whereas, if we bring to mind a pleasurable experience, even if we're not actually having it, our body can, and our nervous system and the immune system and all that can respond as if we are. So if I am anticipating later today getting really great, cute, sweet hugs from my boyfriend's kids who are going to be very excited to see me, that's something for me, will be something, I know that's going to happen. So I'm going to receive it. I'm going to have a real intention to receive that moment later this afternoon. And then now I can enjoy it already. That's going to be fun. So if anyone's up for sharing any of the things that they want to create or receive today. And again, just setting an intention for more is incredibly powerful here. And then I'll invite you to do this evening. So one of the best ways to build habits in your brain is a lot of like habit formation skills are built into this little worksheet. The by when helps us imagine really a specific moment. Well, this will happen, or we're anticipating. So we get to create our future by being intentional about it. Setting an intention. So we're moving into a pleasurable state right away, even as we start doing this, which then allows for better learning and creativity, right? And then reflection on how something went, even if it didn't go great, is a really great way to help build a habit. It helps our brain be more likely to catch it the next time in the moment. It helps us integrate our learning. So the second half of this would be an evening check-in with yourself. Just let yourself rate 1 out of 10. How much pleasure did I have today? This is also a celebrating the gains, because by letting ourselves notice the pleasure, right, our brain is going to have long-term memory and weight better the negative things that happened in our day, unless we consciously put our attention on celebrating the pleasure we had, noticing it, letting it get coded into long-term memory. What was the good thing about today? And then a similar, what worked? And what do I want more of tomorrow? Right. So we are again letting ourselves really anchor what's going well, what's already here, letting pleasure matter. And we have to do these things consciously because our brain's defaults are going to constantly be pulling us back towards survival and worry and stress and anxiety and not enoughness, our brain and our culture's defaults. And so it takes a practice, it takes a commitment, it takes expanding our literal nervous system capacity to rest in pleasure longer. It's a habit to create. We all come very hardwired with the habits of anxiety, of checking, of being alert. This is a habit that we can cultivate of attuning to pleasure. But then foundationally, the moment we're going to actually experience it is in the moment, in our body, in our senses, as we slow down. Okay. So just make sure I'm not missing anything here, but yeah, that is the teaching and the workshop. That's all the blast of information I'm going to send your way right now. We do have some time for questions, but before I get into answering any questions, or if somebody has a particular thing around this that they're struggling with, I would love to get you up and we can maybe even talk about it. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. But before I get into that, I just really want to urge you to start taking some kind of actions on this stuff today, whether it's printing out the sheets, whether it's putting a sticky note, whether it's putting a sticky note reminding you of something reasonable here. Really think through what's something that you want to commit to for yourself, because there is no later. Like, it literally doesn't exist. There's just this moment. There's only this moment to have pleasure. There's only this moment to create more pleasure for the future. So, and every day that goes by without you taking action on helping your life have more pleasure in it, you're going to be less creative, less productive, less joyful, making less of a contribution, and essentially just suffering for no reason. And the world has never needed people who are committed to their own creative pleasure, I believe, more than it does now. Like this, we are all so swept into the default mode of culture and brain state and many, many generations of conditioning. So I just want to tell you how you could be significantly happier in just 30, 60 days, waking up energized, going to bed fulfilled, feeling more and more pleasure throughout your days, really, really tackling and understanding and getting through in your nervous system and your body and in your habits, the things that are in the way of specifically you and more pleasure. And that is that I have a one-on-one coaching program that I call the Wild Genius Life Upgrade. It's weekly coaching over Zoom. And we're learning essentially to wake up excited and enjoy your life moment to moment, no matter what's happening. And even with all the hard stuff, even with the fight and the feeling and the stuck and the reason that you're trapped and the reason this won't work for you. So it's 6 months of weekly live calls, and then you get voice and text support in between. And we get started right away and we dig into the most pressing thing. And people see changes really quickly. But the reason I work with people for 6 months is because then we keep going for as long as we do. So these changes can get really like coded into your, I don't mean this literally, but coded into your DNA, coded into your habits, coded into your nervous system wiring. And so there's no going backwards. And also with 6 months, we get long enough that we get to know each other, and you start to get a little comfortable with me. And then that next layer of thing comes up, the thing that you like didn't even really want to share with your coach, but now you can't really avoid it because we've been working together long enough that it's starting to come up even in real time. So the first step, if this is something that you think might be supportive to you, and even if you're not sure, the first step is just scheduling a free consultation. And you already have an email in your inbox with a link there. You can also go to wildgenius.com and find the link. And it's an hour where we just get clear on where you want to go and what's in the way and how I can help. And it's your first step to putting your stake in the ground that you are ready for something different. And I also want to tell you guys about an offer I have. It just went out right before this workshop in my weekly email, but For anyone who signs up for coaching between now and August 8th, we've got our regular 6 months of coaching calls where we work with like the thing that is coming up and your big intentions. But I'm offering a special bonus wild genius mapping session. Sorry, zone of genius mapping session. And it's where we zoom out and look at your life as a whole and trace the patterns of the things that come most naturally to you. Your zone of genius is basically like the place where you're contributing the most and you're in the most joy. And it's really hard to see because like a fish's zone of genius might be swimming and until it has a bird come along and be like, yeah, no, I can't do that. That's special. It's very, very hard to see the thing that you just love doing and that you're great at and that makes a huge contribution and where time disappears. It's hard to see it for yourself, but when you start to commit to living more and more in it, which also requires to get through all these upper limits things and all the pleasure things and really expand your capacity for more joy. When you start to do that, your life gets way more exciting. You feel more on purpose every day. You start to do the work that you have this real sense of like, oh, I am here for this. And so this special offer bonus session is a session where I take my skills as a writer and editor and coach and interviewer, kind of pulling the threads out of what people have said. This is part of my zone of genius and help you really see the common thread that has been running through your peak life experiences so that you can leave with a much clearer understanding of what you were finally here to do. And if you are committed to more pleasure, this is a seriously good way to steer your whole life in that direction. So all of that starts with booking a free consult. Like I said, the link's in your inbox, or you can go to wildgenius.com. But yeah, basically, I am really helping people just like do what they love every day, deeply enjoy their life, feel like they're living on purpose, clean up their relationships so that they're feeding you, and feeling on track with their life and confident in their path. So I would love to, if you have a sense that this is a time in your life where you are done with the good enough that you've been okay with so far and that you really want to start running on pleasure as your fuel source. Let's talk. I would love to have you. So that brings me to, is there anybody who has any questions about what we were teaching or the coaching or any of that? I have some common ones prepared if you don't, but I would love to give the folks who showed up here live the chance to.
I have a question.
Hey, Loretta.
Hi. Oh my, first off, thank you so much. This has been incredible and just it has made makes it so makes it make so much more sense from what I've been experiencing because I've been actively wanting to create more pleasure in my life and it's been fucking hard. It's been hard and I've been getting in my way. And specifically, like, yes, I love knowing about the upper limit and I can see myself so much in that. But I guess I would love support around like creating. Like, I'm an artist and I want to like enjoy painting, but I find myself like getting to it, or, like sitting down to do it.
Yeah.
And then it just feels like all this pressure of like getting it right and getting it perfect. Like, I'm not having fun. I'm like, the point is fun, but I'm not having fun because of the way I'm approaching it. So I'm open. Yeah, I'm just open to new perspectives and ways I can support myself, really accessing the pleasure and the playfulness and like the creativity from a
Mhm.
different angle.
Yeah. Yeah, well, my very first answer is exactly my first answer about the first, like, how to have more pleasure in any moment, which is really, really coming into your senses, because all of that is a story,
Yeah.
right? There's the story of what it will mean about you, and where it needs to get, and those are all very mind experiences.
Yeah.
And then your body and your senses don't have any of that story. They're just here with that sense of play. So, I would start with letting yourself really drop in for a little bit into the body, like letting, like not even like letting there be like a moment before you start. Maybe, and I don't know if you
Mm.
already have some kind of ritual of getting into the space for
I
painting, whatever.
I don't, but
Or maybe
I
creating
love
something like that too.
I
Getting there
love
with
it.
getting clear with your intention,
Yeah.
and that part of your getting clear, as I said, in pleasure works best when you intend it. So getting clear that part of your intention is to enjoy the experience, really letting that be like explicit.
Yeah.
And then how can you start with just a sense of play, like at the sensory level, like
Mm.
enjoying the feel of the paint or the sound of the brush or watching it, or, like, and actually let yourself zoom into the moment instead of out from the outcome.
I love that.
Yeah.
I
And
also,
I,
yeah, I
I
love that.
imagine that from my own experiments around creativity, what I know is that if I get too stuck in my mind in the story, that's not where the good stuff comes from.
Oh, and then nothing gets done because I'm like overwhelming myself. I'm like, well, this isn't the point. So I don't do anything. So
Yeah.
I love that. I love the invitation to create like a ritualistic transition
Hmm.
from the rest of my world, which is like very mind driven, to like really allowing my pleasure and my body to lead and to have that intention. So, so helpful.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
so glad. And I would also get curious about how you can make it multimodal. And that same also, like, how could this be a game? Like getting playful with it. Like I could imagine um just trying lots of things, but like you could brainstorm what this is too, but like what could be fun today? Turning on a particular music and like moving while you're doing it, or like making the point to do it as fast as you can, or doing it with your non-dominant hand, or just like starting to like just destroy the part of your brain that's trying to be really serious about it by like being like, no, no, off. And my
mm,
sense is also that like there's sort of there's a story you need to break through, but then that like actually there's a lot of space and possibility and richness and play kind of once you're through the threshold of it. I don't know
yeah.
if that's absolutely true for you, but so like basically little tricks like that to like get you out of that
Yeah.
fear mode,
Yeah.
essentially.
There's like a story I tell myself that it's so easy for me to access play with other people, but like on my own, like I'm this little tight butthole who like can't relax and like can't play on my own, you know? So yeah, that there
Mhm.
is a story that
Yeah.
I get to just like not subscribe to anymore. I get to tell
Yeah,
myself story.
unsubscribe. That not helpful. That's another one I use a lot. Not helpful. Thank you. And
Yeah.
also, just I often work with people on, and we won't do a full thing about this, but how is the opposite of that story also true? Like,
Mm.
I would go find evidence and let that matter too.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So
Yeah,
helpful.
thank you. So happy to have you here. Okay, I'm gonna unpin you. And just wanted to recap and remind folks about the offer that's here of if you want. So I know for a lot of people, like we're talking about pleasure, the idea of having a coach feels sort of luxurious or frivolous or um, like hard to justify the investment sometimes. I mean, because it is, it's a big investment in your transformation. It's your own time. It's your own, you may not have had people around you who invested in themselves in this way. And I just want to say that for me, I think of it kind of like I think about education, where investing in upgrading your own brain in your own capacity is one of the best investments you can make. You get to take it with you for the rest of your life. It ripples into how you can influence anyone around you. And the upgrades that you have and who you get to be as you're becoming someone different, you have no idea what you get to create from there. So it can be a little edgy for some people, but I just want to affirm that, um, kind of many of the people operating at the highest level that we all admire, all the athletes and the world-changing executives and all that, like they understand that getting support to transcend where they've been from somebody seeing the things they don't see, someone helping them push what they can't push on their own, someone helping them get out of their own way is a really valuable thing to get help with. And the thing that I help people do is have a truly fulfilling life, which to me, I'm like, there's a reason I'm doing this. I'm like, I can't actually imagine anything more worthwhile to do, both helping people and to invest in that instead of being on the treadmill of just getting done what we think we should get done. And if you don't see a path from where you are now to a life that really like you're waking up excited every day and going to bed fulfilled and having a lot of pleasure in the middle, that is part of what I can help you with and why we should do a consult. So would love, like I said, links in your inbox, wildgenius.com. If you sign up before August 6th, 8th, you get that free Zone of Genius mapping session where I use all my interviewing power skills to help us see the things that are uniquely your gifts to give. And I would love to support any of you in transforming into the most aligned, awake, alive version of yourself, being led by your own internal wild genius. So it's weekly, 6 months, and happy to take any more questions either about that or about the content today. We've got another 15 minutes here together. And I'll just keep going if you guys
I
don't
was,
have.
I'll,
Yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
ask a question, Rachel. So, I'm someone who's been using these tools for a while, as you know, and I would be curious to hear you speak to a time when you like had a plateau and then broke through to even more plateau. You're like, life is good, right? There's a lot that's good that's happening, but then you broke through to even more pleasure and what the obstacle was and what you did.
I mean, honestly, that's like daily. I mean, there's not necessarily it's not like it's a amazing story every day, but this is still something. So I've been working with this for about a decade, and I would say my life is pretty unrecognizable, and that I am significantly happier in ways that I didn't even realize I was unhappy. I'm happier. And at the same time, part of why I'm teaching this workshop is because this is literally something I'm still struggling with, where I'll be sitting in like an idyllic environment with nothing stressful externally, where conditions are so clear that there's no reason for my body to be anxiety, and I'm still sort of like, oh, look at that, I'm not enjoying this moment. The win is that I'm getting better and better at noticing it, having lots of tools and techniques to get through it, and it doesn't last very long, and I don't make it like a big drama about how something's wrong with me, or like it's just like, oh, yes, this is part of the spiral. I'm trying to think about if there's any one sort of like really good breakthrough story around. I mean, I'm gonna have to think about that one. Do you have any, Sarah, since you've been working with this tools for so long?
Uh, Oh, I don't have a great breakthrough story. I think my process sounds a lot like yours, right? It's like what you were saying about like the frequency with which you notice, like the duration of like being in a more reactive state or like a contracting state is shorter. And then, like, so it's happening less often. You, you can move through it more quickly, right? And so it's just like, a constant refinement rather than like one big
Yeah,
aha.
I mean, there are definitely.
Although I would say one, I think maybe the biggest breakthrough for me was like we often deny our like creative sexual energy and pleasure, and like allowing that to be what it is has probably been my biggest breakthrough. And I'm sure
Yeah,
you help people with that too.
totally. Yeah, I mean, that's something our mutual teachers, the conscious leadership group, teach a lot, is about how sexual energy is our creative energy. I didn't talk about that very explicitly here today, but this life force, allowing that to be present. Yeah, I would say my experiences of being on like a ecstatic dance floor have changed a lot since I had um, the possibility of feeling that more. I would say the more like concrete breakthrough moments that I could point to that I've seen have to do with moments where I've done an exercise to really take responsibility of how I'm creating results that I say I don't want, and I write the recipe for how I'm doing it, and all of a sudden I see
Mm-hmm.
all the ways that I could actually do something different, and then something really big gets to change right away. That has been like, I definitely have moments where I can see like, oh my gosh, just like whoa, the whole world magic eyes, and I see something totally differently. And I see that happen with clients quite a bit too. The pleasure, because I think it's really, we're expanding a nervous system capacity, it happens a little more at the pace that like getting in shape would get would happen, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
you can be sore, you can see have a really meaningful experience in one moment, but the true changes happen over a little bit more of a time, and it's just this constant spiral where we get to keep getting better and better. So yeah,
Or maybe just enjoying it more and more.
yeah, that's true. Enjoying
Right.
enjoying the game and the challenge of it. Exactly. I love that. That's
Yeah.
actually been a big part of it for me lately. Has been just finding more and more pleasure in the challenge of of can I enjoy feeling stuck? Can I enjoy the part of me that thinks that I should be farther by now on this particular thing? Can I just find my acceptance and my no problem and my play with any of it? So, and that's where I think the real master skill comes in. So, yeah, thanks for the question. I know we've had quite a few folks need to, I'm going to unpin you. Quite a few folks need to drop off. So just wondering if there's anyone live who still has any advice or help in executing this that you need. Any questions about the pleasure plan? Any questions about coaching or a consult? Well, I just want to say that let me figure out what it is I want to say. Yeah, that basically the things that can change. A lot of people get nervous about signing up for coaching, not because they doubt me or the process, but because they doubt themselves. And I just want to say, if this is you, that's like that there's some reason why you don't think you would actually get results, even though you trust that other people are getting results from spending this time or investing or really going for it. And I just want to say that that is incredibly common. Most people feel that way. So if you're feeling that way, don't make it, don't let that be the reason you don't move forward. Let that be something you bring into letting us talk in a consultation, and that having somebody who believes in you beyond what you can see is also part of the coaching relationship. It's the pattern of thinking that you're stuck, that things can't change, that this is just the way it is. That is part of some, often it can be that conditioning. It's part of the brain focusing on the negative. It's almost always a lie. Anything is possible. We have no idea what is possible, honestly. I have no idea it's possible is one of my magic words of the week. It's a thing that I think about often, that and from a powerful place, from a powerful state, from a state of pleasure, from a state of your nervous system being relaxed, the things you can create are things you cannot even imagine from when you're in a state of fear. And so if this is part of what has you hesitating to reach out, get support, move forward on trying to really live into your best possible life, if you don't know exactly what it would look like, or if you're afraid that maybe you're the one person it's not going to work for, let's talk through that. Really get on my calendar. Let's talk about it, because that's a very human brain kind of thing to do. It does not mean you have to believe it. We can unsubscribe from that story together. Not helpful. See where it came from, see how it's trying to be helpful, but let it go. So, all right, I just want to leave you all. If there's no other questions, I will maybe end this a little bit early. Anyone else who's still here? I want to remind you one more time, I'm going to share my screen, of these simple tricks to find more pleasure that we can do right now in any moment. So again, as you're still here listening to the end of this webinar, inviting you to come into your senses, really let yourself feel the air on your skin, feel what your hands are touching, feel the position your feet are in, and then adding some breath. Breath is that fun part of our function that happens automatically, but we can also control with our consciousness. Deeper breaths signal to the nervous system that we're safe, that it's a safe moment to have pleasure. And asking yourself, what could you enjoy right now? And how could you bring just a little bit more joy to your day? All right. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure to be here with you. And I look forward. You'll see me in your inboxes, and I plan to teach something. I haven't decided what yet, but so we'll have some opportunity to come together again, likely in July. So I hope to see you there. Thank you again so much. And remember, investing in yourself so that you can learn the skills of truly having pleasure in your life, waking up fulfilled, going to bed excited for what you did that day, really feeling joy day by day by day, moment by moment on your random Tuesday afternoon. getting everything out of the way that's preventing you from that, all the doubt, all the stuckness, all the confusion. If you're ready for some serious support in a major life upgrade, let's talk. Thanks, everybody. I'll see ya.